All right, everybody, it's us, New Enlightened Lifestyle Medicine. Your host Patrick Herbert and my co-host Lynn Settle. How you doing over there, Lynn?
Good.
How's the weather?
Snow.
You said before we came online that you were coming back up the hill. Did you have to plow some more? Or?
No, my wife goes to work on Sunday mornings, and unfortunately, winter has now progressed to the point where the only way we can get up and down the hill is with chains.
Wow.
So I had to go down to the bottom of the hill and meet her to take the chains off her Jeep so she could go on, because she didn't want to drive it
on the road,
on the highway. Yeah. And then I walk back up the hill, and that's, so I get good exercise that way.
Good.
It keeps me.
You're never breaking a sweat in whatever the temperature is, 20-degree weather over there, huh?
Oh no, not much. No, it's it's a 500-foot climb, almost a mile.
Oh,
the snow is about, even though I plowed it some, it's still over a half foot deep. So, so it's a trudge.
Wow.
But
yeah, that is.
I love being outdoors. Got my dog with me, fresh air. It's all good.
Well, believe it or not, we had a little bit of a cold front come, the same cold front, I guess, that's been traversing the United States, came down to Houston. So our temperature went, yesterday was 80. No, wait, the day before it was like 85. And then now it is approximately, this morning it was like 48 degrees, which is cold for us. Now it's gone up to about 55, but anyways, all right, enough about the weather. Let me get back to our viewers as much as I can, because I tend to go off on a tangent. Not your fault, my fault completely. Just watch a video with Dr. Randall and I can start talking about random stuff for about 30 minutes. So, all right. So today, one of the things that we're going to focus on is, what is this all about with regards to what you read and hear in spiritual circles, new age circles, about DNA activation. And this is something that both my wife and I went through at the same time. And so what we wanted to do, I had sent Lynn some information with regards to DNA activation, a little bit of information, or probably it was just a link to the International Academy of Consciousness, but Luis Monero was one of the books that I was led to, which explained to me what I was going through, which was one of the more, in all honesty, it was like back-to-back mind-blowing experiences, especially when you're led to information and stuff. That's a real eye-opener, because who's doing the leading and how is this happening? Now, the link I had sent you, and I just breezed over it real quick, was a quick background information. And one of the reasons I didn't want to read it is because I don't want my memories being overlaid with additional information that might detract from my memory of my experiences. You know how we could kind of insert data into our past experiences and stuff. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to come from a clean slate so that you would have this knowledge and that you could, ask me certain questions. That is, if you're up to it, or I could just begin to discuss with regards to my experience. But one of the things was I know it's true. I think there's been a lot of, because it was a very practical thing, but I think there's been a lot of, some of the subject tends to become very mystified. In that article, even though I briefly read over it, seemed very grounded, the one that I had sent you. So, because you go into the new age realms and things get very, there's a lot of, I don't know if I would say mysticism, but there's a lot of, I don't know, you know what I mean by
right. Well, just to get me to have a little bit of background, is regarding your awakening and then regarding DNA activation. Are they two different things, or do you consider them the same thing?
I would consider them to be a part of the process. It was a part of the process. Now, what was interesting to me is that, at least in my experience and with my wife, Rochelle, is that our awakening found us. We weren't looking for an awakening. We were just living our lives. We had just, gotten together. We got together in 2012. And one of the very first things that we came across, we were just like browsing the web or something, the concept of twin flames. And then we watched this video once where there was this narration that would sing this song. It was like a new agey kind of video, and it would be like, it would say in the background, you'd hear this voice going, "You must unite," and it would be my wife and I. We were like in stitches watching this, and we were like, we kind of started to make fun of it because, like I said, before we went through what we went through, this stuff was all just kind of like silly stuff. I didn't.
You stated in your article about your awakening that you always been kind of curious about New Age, though.
I was curious about the afterlife, and that began when my grandfather died. And I was 14 when that happened, and it set me off on a little bit of a journey, which landed me ultimately as a teenager around 16 or 17 amongst authors such as Bruce Moen. And he had a forum called the Afterlife Knowledge Forum. He's since died, but that was how I was introduced to Robert Monroe, because he was a Robert Monroe disciple, I guess you could say. He went to the Monroe Institute of in Virginia over there, the Monroe Institute of Out of Body Experiences. But it's called, I think it's just called the Monroe Institute. And there where they do, they induce out of body experiences using binaural audio. And this is important because this is where I was first introduced to the concept of brainwave manipulation via binaural audio.
Right.
And I know that they could also do it with light, but Robert Monroe had pioneered a technique he called hemisync, and it was, two different tones being put into your ear, and then your brain would automatically, make a third tone, and it would be like a vibrato. You hear the whoa, 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 and that would, of course, entrain your brain waves. So I was introduced to that first, and from a very young age, and I read all the Robert Monroe's books, and I was very fascinated with them. So that's where that ties in. Now, it wasn't New Age like stuff. I had never really, my traditional background would have been not a religious upbringing, but an upbringing associated with the Christian religion, because my parents were Christian, and occasionally we go to church and stuff like that. So, but whenever Rochelle and I got together, the information surrounding Robert Monroe went into hyperdrive, and I started to receive all of this information. Like I would wake up, and there would be, it's like stuff. I've always been an avid reader. Stuff on my Kindle, stuff on my, and this is prior to when there was really targeted marketing. Not like you have today where your phone like spies on you, and then you see the pop-ups of everything you're talking about, right? This
drives me nuts.
Yeah, this was prior to that. So I'd be like, well, I would get a recommendation that would be completely disassociated with my account for something, or just randomly browsing. Back then I was, being a computer programmer, I was obsessed with, I didn't want to be tracked on the internet. I'd run all the, I'd run through a VPN, I'd, hide my identity, and all that stuff. So
sure.
I've never used accounts, barely ever use any like I had an Amazon account, but I would ever only used it to order stuff, but never really. Well, that's pretty much what you do with an Amazon account. But so I all of a sudden all of this stuff became relative to my experience with regards to the Stargate, Project Stargate that the military held. A lot of the people within Project Stargate went to the Monroe Institute and learned about out of body experiences and this, and there were very famous people, and can't think of their names right now, but the head of it, and he was the head of Project Stargate. They started, the first thing I noticed was they started the project, I believe it was in August of 1978, and I think it was literally August 17th, 1978, and that's my birthday. So that was the first kind of like, oh well, that's an interesting coincidence. Not that I claim to be, I just want to double check this. Not that I claim to be associated with Project Stargate, or that somehow is mystically attached to me. That was just one of the first things that I had noticed. Yeah, 1978.
So they were pushing or training people to do astral travel then?
Yeah, that was, it was in.
That associated with the military at all? Because I know, weren't the military secret?
Yeah, that was their Project Stargate. Yeah, that was all about remote viewing, and it was
remote viewing, right?
And it was a real phenomenon. And I read a bunch of books on this, and this was around 2012, 2013. So that would really kind of, and his name was Skip Atwater, was that's right, and who ended up becoming the head of the Monroe Institute at some point. So yeah, they would do, it was all about remote viewing, and there was some great success, and they had a lot of training via the Monroe Institute, and there was another gentleman involved that they would go and visit. I apologize for being so fractured in my memory over here with regards to this, because I wasn't prepared to talk about it, but yeah, that was one of the first, and that was very fascinating, and that really started to reading through their documentation and reading about Project Stargate and those who participated. It was remarkable. I didn't think anything like that could exist. I didn't think remote viewing was possible. And I was shocked about the out of body experiences that Robert Monroe had, and and all the collection of data that they have at the Monroe Institute. They had recorded everything. They would put people in the hypnotic, like kind of like trance-like state with the binaural audio, and then that person would kind of caught in between being asleep and awake, would talk. They would be isolated in a containment unit that would block out electromagnetic frequencies and such, and they would go into start to fall asleep with the binaural audio, and then Monroe himself would ask them questions, and they would answer kind of like they were in a trance. And I started to learn about hypnotism and all that kind of stuff. So really, the information part of it began there. Now, I wouldn't have understood the DNA activation if I didn't understand the binaural audio. So everything was very sequential in terms of what I was led to. And it was building on my past, what I already had studied and researched, which was, the gateway for me was Robert Monroe material when I was a teenager. And that, of course, stuck with me up until I became an adult. Right. And by the time this all kicks off, I'm 34 years old, 35. So it'd been quite long amount of time since I was first introduced to that, but it was always in my mind. I started being led to material about the subconscious mind, the way it works. I started to be led to all sorts of different things, but I didn't know what was happening, why supernatural events were happening to my wife and I, until the Lewis Monroe book. And then because my wife, when I met her, I never had felt that like I did about anybody ever. No celebrity, nothing. The minute I saw her, I was like, it felt like the air was like sucked out of me. I was just completely mesmerized by this person. And I've written in my article, and I always borrow the line from the movie 17 Again, where he says, it felt like if I didn't, I didn't have you, I would die. Like like as if she was oxygen, and without oxygen, you'll die. And that's what she was to me. Like if I didn't have this woman, I felt like I would die. And she felt the same way about me. And, I've talked about that story multiple times, but that was a big, huge, and, we were like, to this day, like, still, my shirt. I love my awesome wife that I wear all the time.
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me like you must have known each other in the past.
Yeah. Somehow we knew each other, and from some other place and time. And we were ecstatic with each other.
Prior connection.
Mm-hmm. And this was, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it out there. This is one of the most remarkable things that happened during my awakening. Was so my wife and I get together, we're ecstatic about each other. And the one thing we can't stop doing is keeping our hands off each other. And I'm talking about, like, we went to the next level when it came to,
Sure. Right.
The things that a man and a woman do, and
sure.
Or anybody does, and not just a man and woman, but
right.
And we were engaging in that literally all day long, to where everything was falling off to the side. Like, if I'm on this journey to awakening, well, the fact that my wife and I can't stop fornicating, basically.
Now, and then speaking, partially from my own experience, for a lot of us, when we meet someone and stuff, there's an infatuation stage where that kind of can happen. You should we go out to eat? No, we're too busy. But generally that tapers off.
Mm-hmm. Never with us.
My experience, whether it could be a couple of weeks, it could be a couple of months, whatever, it tapers off. But it sounds like with you that it was a different thing.
Yeah. And I'm talking about I joke with her all the time. I'm like, we had to have some sort of world record or universal record, because every day, multiple times a day for years. And where, my employer at the time had, graciously allowed me to work from home. Well, because I was working for a small company, and I was
Sure.
it was a family run computer company. They were in project completion software. And so I had a good relationship with them at the time, and they knew my I was married before, and they just saw the toll that destructive relationship took on me. And when they found that I was with someone that I loved and who loved me back, they were, really, lenient to me. But the problem was we couldn't stop. So one day, and this is the first time I've talked about this in public, the only other person that knows this is Tom from Montauk. I'm just sitting there and I'm typing in my address where I lived at the time, where we were living, just in Google Maps, just messing around. And the screen goes blank, and the words horny pop up in place of what would typically be Google Maps or a map. It's just literally a blank screen in my web browser, and it just says the word horny. Well, this, of course, is a big, oh my gosh, like there couldn't possibly be a Google engineer on the other end of this that knows that my wife and I can't keep our hands off each other, right? So I'm like, that was one big one. And the feeling I was, and of course that made me, that was all I needed to see, to realize that maybe, okay, yeah, and we love each other, and but there's something else going on. It was a very, it was an incredibly, because you're also at the same time I'm going, okay, so then I'm being observed in one way. So, something's observing me, and that changed our, we realized that there was something else, something going on. And this is, and this is while we're going through the process of this. So on one end, we begin being led to information, listening to information, but we're still engaging. And I'm pushing off everything with regards to information, books, this and that I'm being led to. I'm pushing. And that's when that came. And I'm like, oh, I better start paying attention to this, and what's going on. So yeah, that was a big one. That was a huge one. And it was funny, because it said the word horny.
Yeah, but I would immediately look around, maybe look for cameras in the room.
Right. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. But I knew there weren't any. I knew I knew that. And it would, and the fact that it was a Google search, I don't know possibly how anybody at Google would, and why would and how did the code get changed from a web browser right on the fly to just be a blank screen that said horny? So there was some, I know I keep saying that word, it's kind of funny, but this is the truth, 100% truth. It's one of the things I didn't write in the article, and I don't really tell anybody, because it's at first it's so the, positive forces or dimensions are throwing out words like horny, but they will throw out words that relate to me in this particular experience that I would understand, and and in a humorous kind of way. So whenever we kind of, we didn't stop, but we brought more balance into our relationship, and then things started to really take off from there. And this part is past the time when I first had the initial visions. So the timeline, I didn't mean to throw the timeline around like that. So essentially what had happened was first I went through the lung surgeries, and then after the lung surgeries in about first we got together 2012, had the lung surgeries 2013. The visions start leading me to some information, but then that's when we started to, we're picking up with our intimate relationship as well. And then eventually that had happened. So DNA activation, man, it's wild. Got the other side telling you that you're too horny.
So is a DNA activation, is this an instantaneous type thing? Is it like a switch, or is it a process?
Okay, so I believe it's both.
Oh.
Because the first thing I noticed was my awareness went from this to just monstrous self-awareness.
Right.
Whereas in the past, like I had said, the work, buy, consume, die, just kind of, staring at the ground, going through life, going through the motions without really much self-awareness, just like a robot, literally like a robot, just acting out my programming. And then not really realize or paying attention to what I'm doing. But these events, events like that, plus the activation, and I'll go into how I feel that happened, in terms of resonance and resonant frequencies, and it was also with regards to binaural audio and the effect that those frequencies have on our what they call the junk DNA, which is a junk.
Right.
And so yeah, and I just kind of lost track for a second there, but yeah, that where was I? What was I talking about? The process.
The switch versus the process. Versus the process. They're both.
So it is, and there, and the awareness was that massive increase of awareness is when I knew something was really happening, because I had never been so self-aware, and I was able to analyze my own stuff, which started to really bring the stuff up from the subconscious mind in terms of past behavioral patterns, the way, past ways in which I was not a pleasant guy a lot of the time. Because I was overprescribed a lot of Adderall, but no doctor held a gun to my head and told me to take it. This is my own. So the Adderall and the pharmaceuticals I was on, working 48 hours and sleeping, I would work for 2 days and sleep for one night, work for 2 days. Just
did that. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like a whole, of course your boss loves that because you're constantly producing, but you're also killing yourself.
Yes. Not good.
So yeah, that increase of awareness. Also, what am I doing? Why am I taking this? What I started asking questions. All these behaviors start coming up from. I'm like, what's happening to me? Really? Like, we're experiencing all this stuff, but you're in kind of like a dreamlike trance. That's how I used to describe the way I used to be. So I didn't really pay much attention to. Well, I did pay attention, but I didn't really associate or make the connection between some of the things we were experiencing. We just thought, well, whoa, like, oh, look at this, all this wonderful stuff. At one point I talked to her, I was like, it's almost like everything we want to happen happens. And it would be silly things like me needing something from my friend. I would be thinking about it. I would talk to her about it. And then he would call and he would, one of the things I like, I'll be honest about it, especially back then after my lung surgeries, which this sounds bizarre, but my doctor had told me that marijuana is a bronchial dilator and that I would benefit from it. And I'm like, well, okay, thanks, doc.
Right.
So I would, I'd have to buy from somewhere, and I would get it from a friend. And when I would run out, and I would be like, we would jokingly, she would like sit on the floor and go like she was trying to talk to him in her mind. And then he would like call and we'd be like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? And every time we needed something, and it wasn't just that, it was other things, like everything started to happen for us like instantaneously when we wanted. And that was part of the, we were like, okay, what's going on? Like beyond, I mean, it's remarkable. And I mean, like the fact is, and I say this a lot, if she didn't go through it with me, I probably would have thought I was going insane. Obviously. Oh. And I'm sure there are a lot of people locked up in places that have gone through something similar that, the system here says, oh, that's schizophrenia, or that's, something else. So, and they put those people, they lock them up. And I would
their worldview is just broken at that point, I guess. Mm-hmm. I would imagine, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's so I mean, but sharing everything with her lent, the one thing she didn't share were the visions. Those I had gotten myself, and I would dictate them to her. And but everything else that was supernatural, like some of we had seen, and I know this wasn't a positive symbol, the Eye of Ra. We saw the formation of it in clouds, and with the symbol of the Eye of Ra, and it was, and we're both sitting there staring into the sky like, oh my, are you seeing this? Another thing was the soul gazing we did, where I talked to you about that, I think.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it, where it was kind of like a spontaneous connection thing.
And then we saw and experienced our past lives together, like boom, instantaneously. Now, and that brings into question the concept of time. How did all of that just happen within a split second of our time? But in our minds, we saw the totality of it, including all the face shapes. So, and we both, that happened to us at the same time. And, it was things like that something is happening. What's going on? What is it? That question alone synchronistically brought stuff into our experience, information, especially. Or did you want the short answer?
Either direction, but you did figure it out though, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what made me eventually start my blog and stuff. How do you go through, you don't go through all of this and then suddenly just carry on with life as normal. No, it was like my life, and this is a good thing, because my life as it was not in good shape. I was, I believe the Adderall was destroying me from the inside. I was a chain smoker, Adderall, drink, alcohol every night, like hard. I was in that weird party lifestyle, and my amusement and entertainment would be playing video games after working, which isn't really living life. I was living life through games like Skyrim.
Well, a lot of people, sometimes to describe something like that, use that metaphor or whatever it is, the road to Damascus moment. Mm-hmm. Is that jive at all with this, or?
I in a way, I mean, I'm kind of, I think because of my conditioning as a programmer, I'm always trying to figure stuff out and trying to think it through, trying to, I don't necessarily, and I think the road to Damascus, like, the big O is, I mean, they don't really, to me, it was more like not shades of gray, but nuance. Like there was, it wasn't just a boom, bam, hello, I'm here, it was, it was a process, and that was and I had to get through my own doubts. There's, which I call the, the manipulation that we're under here from, the unseen voices, or what I call Archon manipulation, where your brain's being constantly bombarded by all sorts of, thoughts. And I this was before I knew anything about psychic attacks and stuff like that. But then shortly after I went through that awakening, then the dark side factors in. So it wasn't all, I didn't start wearing white robes and, walking around the forests, touching the trees and, chanting or anything like that. And I'm not poking fun. I mean, that's usually what people's, what they think about whenever they think about someone going through. No, I mean, I was but I started to struggle with functioning as life as it was versus everything I was realizing about life as it truly is. You know what I mean? There was a huge conflict that started to develop, and I eventually had to shed my old self, destroy it literally, and become reborn. So that part is true in a regard. Hopefully I answered that question correctly. Yeah,
I'm trying to sometimes, try to identify just with my own life some, I pondered some of the stuff I've read of, from your blog and stuff. And, and a lot of, for me, at least from my experience, it's more little things. I don't have any super, or at least none that I'm aware of, synchronicity type activity stuff. But, I notice more about just like little frustrations, something happens, whether it's stubbing my toe or dropping something while I'm working on something or whatever, and just, and a little annoyance that pops up, and a lot of times, we just get annoyed. It's unconscious, we swear a little, damn it, whatever, and this or that, but then, as we become more conscious, I see that, and, and so I don't know, it's just I don't like that part of me. I don't want to deal in life being annoyed at little things.
Right. Oh, and that's I learned one of the biggest parts of my awakening was perception management. And I learned a ton from Tom. Remember I told you at a certain point, I was searching for what was happening in web browsers and his links would come back. And this wasn't, the whole message from doing my address search in Google that I got, telling me that I'm a little bit too wasn't the only time I experienced something like that. Why would it be that suddenly only his links to his article were the only search results that I would get directly? I mean, that's really focusing me in on stuff.
Have you talked to anyone that also had that happen?
I have not met in this experience yet to anybody that has that hasn't happened, or to somebody that has happened to. Other people have reached out to me and talked about the synchronicity. They've talked about the supernatural experiences, but they've never talked about being. And this was one thing that was fascinating to Tom and I. And we had, when Tom and I first talked on the phone, an unusual thing happened. My phone suddenly became overheated and shut itself off. Whoa. And yeah, we were like, okay, that's a little bizarre. We start talking. We're talking about my experiences, what's happening, his experience, and he's excited because he's like, no one's ever, like, how he was very excited about the fact that I was being supernaturally led to his material and only his. And I was printing out his articles, and I would dissect them word for word. And there was familiarity in his writing style and my own. And so it was so easy for me to dissect his writings. So I would take Sharpies and I would walk around the house and I would write token things, like, especially with regards to perception. Yeah, I'd write it on the windows. I'd write it on the mirrors, so I would see it every day. And and one of the things that I really was, and some of the material I was led to after that was all by a gentleman by the name of Joseph Murphy, who wrote The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, which I recommend to anybody and everybody.
I've read that book when I was a teenager.
Yeah, and that was one of the most and it's things like that, which you're on the path, but for me something was going wrong in my life to where I needed a monstrous course correction. Like, I mean, I'm, like I said, I was 34 years old. What 34-year-old has this unknown or, very rare condition where they require all these surgeries? I almost die in the second surgery. I have the third surgery. My whole world is thrown into just complete chaos. I was in a marriage that was selfless, like I was, actually by that time, we had been separated and I was with Rochelle, but we hadn't gotten married until 2013. And when, after I was separated and going to finalizing my divorce. So I'm like, what, and I'm when I talk to you about abusing Adderall, I'm not kidding. I was eating it like candy to just keep performing, to keep writing code. I was, just all for programming. It wasn't for any social, it was all just so I could, because I thought it made me the greatest programmer.
Is it physically addictive?
Yeah. I mean,
you go through withdrawals if you stop?
Oh yeah. It is a dopamine agonist and reuptake inhibitor. So it floods your brain with dopamine and it prevents your brain from reabsorbing the dopamine. It is also releases you can never say the chemical name correctly. But the chemical that is very similar to adrenaline, and it releases that into your brain, and that's the motivating factor. So basically what Adderall does is it, and it takes you out of homeostasis like crazy, because it's pumping you're not in balance anymore. When your brain's flooded with dopamine, and you're suddenly no matter how mundane it is, like reading the small print on a receipt you get or something from the grocery store is the most interesting thing in the world on Adderall. Like,
is it euphoric?
Oh yeah, it was in the beginning, and then that kind of tapered the euphoria, and it became, but there was still some, because like I said, with the dopamine you were still, but in the very beginning when I first, that's the hook, and that's what I think they do to get you addicted to this stuff. First time I took it, I was like, I'm like, drink a cup of coffee. I felt like I was on cloud 9, and I'm working as a programmer in an office building, and this is like year 2000, I think, maybe 1999 when they first prescribed it to me, or 2000.
It doesn't interfere with your ability to logically deduce programming.
I always felt that it made me figure stuff out faster, but it made me just weird. It turned me into a really weird guy, especially the worse I got addicted to it. It became, because I would be so uncomfortable, I'd be so nervous, and I'd have such anxiety from taking too much of it, while at the same time receiving the pleasure chemical, the dopamine. So it was a really interesting combination. And of course, my tolerance is sky high, so I'm having to take tons, and my body, and just, I mean, they said even if I smoked 3 cartons of cigarettes a day, my lungs did not have looked like what they look like. And I had what was called emphysema bulla without the emphysema, with these things called blebs all over my lungs. And they're like air sacs. Some of them were as big as my head. So my lungs had become elongated, and the smallest ones were about the size of ping pong balls. And the surgeon was like, he's never seen anything like it. And they looked in the history. They only knew of one other case. And guess what year that other case was? 1978. So even that was synchronistic in a way. Of course,
I mean, the feeling of your own mortality just
yeah, and at the age of 34, when my life was already just very chaotic, that was a real big, yeah. It took a long time to bounce back from all that, because after the third surgery, and because at the second surgery I was bleeding out, and I guess something had happened to the right lung, and the nurse was negligent in the hospital, so I'm bleeding. My wife's like freaking out. I'm in tremendous amount of pain. They deny me pain medication, and they saying that I'm taking too much morphine, asking for too much morphine. And this is like literally the night after the second surgery on my right lung. The first surgery was on the left lung. So yeah, it was pretty bad. And by the morning, the surgeon comes in and he looks at my stats, he looks at me, he looks at it, and the whole room just erupted. And because he knew what was happening, and the nurse was negligent, they like fired her like literally on the spot. And or at least I think they did.
So now are you 100%? I mean, it's all behind?
Yeah, I mean, I have, if anything goes wrong with my breathing, I have PTSD from the whole thing. If I feel a pain in my upper back, it causes me to have a panic attack, because how it all started was my lung collapsed. And then I had what was called a tension pneumothorax, which puts pressure on your heart because air is leaking out of your lungs and into your chest cavity. And then your lung collapses because the pressure differential is too great. And then that pushes pressure on your heart, which feels like a heart attack. And then, the first thing I do when I go to the hospital, they start cutting me open, shoving a tube into me to get the air out. It was actually the emergency clinic before they relocated me to a hospital. And, I'm like, I don't really know what's going on. And they took x-rays of my lungs, but they didn't tell me. They were like, yeah, we're going to need to send you somewhere else, to this. Because I was like, can I go home? Can you stitch this up? And I go home, and they're like, no, you've got some issues, but they didn't want to say anything. And then I remember them asking, they were looking at me strange. They're going, how do you smoke? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, how much? I'm like, 2 packs a day. And they're like, they knew even if I was doing that, it shouldn't look like that. Right. So yeah, it has not been an easy journey. That's all I can say. It's been quite a roller coaster. And now I know, because I've had the assistance from unseen forces, and I've had interactions with them. I've had miraculous healings. I've had situations where my back, I keep having what's called a slipped rib. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It's kind of like a slipped disc, but it's your rib kind of pops a little bit out of place. Well, I've been having that in my mid upper back. Right. And one time it was so bad, and I was like shut down from the panic, because I thought, okay, certainly something's wrong here. This is, right. And I said a prayer. I was like, I need some help. And I'm standing, and this is the second time I've had this kind of intervention. I was standing there, and all of a sudden my entire back begins to tingle. And the tingling, which doesn't feel bad, it doesn't feel unpleasant, feels somewhat pleasant. It became very intense to where my whole body started to break out in goosebumps everywhere. Right? Like literally the hair starts rising on the back of my neck. My hair's standing straight up. I'm getting something's happening in my back, and the pain goes away. The first time this happened, it was I was laying in bed, because I had the same problem like about a year or two ago, and I'm laying in bed and I say a prayer. I'm like, please, I can't. The panic shuts me down. I'm scared. I don't want to go. I want to be able to breathe. I have my daughter. I want to. It's that bad of panic attack. And Rochelle always tells me she knows what's happening, because I turned white as a ghost. And something touched my leg on my thigh, and I felt this trail go up from my thigh, up my back, up to the spot at that particular time, and that same tingling sensation, and the pain completely gone. So I've had 2 interventions of that kind since this has happened. So I know, and this is what a shaman had said. I mean, I'm still figuring out my role here. Shaman had told me that I had a lot of interest. She referred to it as an intergalactic audience. One of the things that David Ike Sear told me, she said, I'm a conduit. I'm a conduit for positive forces too. That I and then another psychic told me that same thing, said that I'm here to transfer and anchor frequencies here. So I have a role that depends upon me maintaining a certain level of interaction with the, I can't just shut down. They're using me in some way or another for this global awakening that's happening. And those prophecies that Rochelle and I were led to about us uniting in 2012, this is something David Icke has even talked about, literally happened to her and I. We united, we got together in 2012. We never had experienced a love. I mean, to this day, we're just as crazy about each other. She can't walk past the room without me just frothing at the mouth. I'm like, I'm attracted to her on every level, physically, emotionally, mentally, like I said, we wear the shirt every day. We go out in public. Everybody knows us around this part of town because we always wearing shirts and, let's say we profess our love for each other.
Yeah.
Which is, and I think that's another, what I say is probably another, maybe a universal first or some sort of a record set, constantly displaying our love for each other with pride. And, and I think it's one of the best messages to give. So I lived everything that all these people that I didn't care about before my awakening have been talking about, like people like David Icke. And I had talked to you how I was led to David Icke and how that was mind-blowing. Just that brief 5-second clip of him talking, and suddenly I'm just like obsessed. I have to find out everything about this dude. And this is back. I mean, that was about in 2014. So it's been a while. That was the first time I was introduced to David Icke, was 2014. So yeah, I mean, and I had told you how his seer had also said that I would be in contact with his office, and that actually happened. No, I'm friends with Gareth, his son.
So, my life is relatively predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Just, like most people's lives. But it sounds to me like your life is somewhat unpredictable. I mean, especially, during what you're telling me, a lot of crazy stuff happened that there's no way that you could have anticipated. It's
not at all
out of the blue type experiences, be it, and particularly where it seems apparent that there's energies or intelligences or whatever they are that are apparently coming at you, both positive and negative and whatever. And so, which it's going to throw more. It's going to throw a wrench into things, so it must be awful tough to kind of plan things when you got other people that apparently have their own purposes that, that maybe are not entirely clear. And you are kind of, like you say, a conduit, or you're receiving whatever it is, whether it's instructions or just influences or whatever they are. So it kind of doesn't it just, to me, it would be a confusing way to live.
No, it's not. It's because it's my day-to-day experience. The synchronicity, the guidance I get. It's like sometimes the numerical sequences that I will be exposed to, which have definitive meaning to me over the course of years. This meaning has been implanted in my mind, and I will literally read, navigate like it's almost like a conversation. And I have it, and it's fascinating. My wife too, we will say a prayer for protection. And next thing you know, we'll start seeing the number 333 everywhere. And if you look up the number 333, that's usually a sign that in some interpretations of that sign, or that your request has been granted. And we'll experience it every day. If we will start, if I'm about to get attacked, 666 will pop up everywhere. And I try to document this as best as I can. Because that's part of the rules of engagement, is negative forces have to tell you that they're going to be doing something to you. And, you have to have a level of awareness whether or not you're, to understand this. And a lot of people don't. So they just go on with their lives, and they don't even realize that they're being attacked by negative aliens, or, whatever you want to call them. Like, some people like to call them demons. Some people call them archons. Some people call them the jinn. Some people call them negative aliens. Some people call them reptilian. There's all sorts of, and I believe that there's many different negative factions that are kind of messing with us here. I think that this world, there's a an ebb and a flow between positive and negative forces, and it's just kind of like a battleground where you can aggressively learn when you incarnate here because of this intensity of these two forces constant in battle. You have the yin and the yang describing this perfectly. So this is a ripe place for catalyst for growth, for your own spiritual growth, individual growth. You know, I talk about the word spiritual being loaded, but you know, we learn by growing. We learn by catalysts. Something happens, we learn from it. If we're, you know, aware, and if we're not, it keeps repeating until we get the lesson. That's one of the things I've noticed. And so it, on one end, it serves a very beneficial purpose to people incarnating here. It's the battlefield. It could be a battlefield, but also we have control of our perception. We need to have the awareness that we can control our perception. And like I said, I learned that and I solidified that. So I don't look at, you know, this goes back to the glass is half empty, glass is half full. I could look outside and I could look at the bricks, the trees, the this or that, and I can see nothing but beauty. And another dude who's got a negative, or another person with a negative mentality or whatever, glass is half empty, they could look at the same scene and they'll be like, oh, it's gross, it's yucky, it's ugly. You know, they'll see all the negatives. So I've reconditioned my brain to, and part of this, you know, who helped tremendously is, you know, people like, you know, the subconscious, Joseph Murphy, the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
To see the world in its beauty all the time. And doing that, you know, you have your brain and your neurons and all that stuff your brain could be reprogrammed, you know, from your pessimistic outlook to your positive forward thinking outlook. And by repetition, we start, you know, synaptical connections are formed, new neurological groups, neuroplasticity, things like that. And you begin to experience the world in a much better and more heightened state of awareness in a more positive way.
Yeah.
And it takes work. And a lot of people are afraid of the work.
Right.
Because you have to recondition yourself.
Well, you know, sleeping is easy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's why we, you know, flip on the television, because it puts your mind into kind of a half asleep state while you
oh, yeah.
Or, you know, of course, drugs, alcohol, and all that. Or, I don't know, where, you know, remaining alert and conscious, you know, it takes effort. You know, you have to, you know, but it can also be painful, or I don't know. You become more aware of
your own shit.
It's yeah, exactly. You know, where if you're in kind of a semi-hypnotic state, you know, even when things are hurting you, you're not as much there to let them bother you, you know. But when you're conscious, trying to be more conscious, more aware, you know, your own shit, you become more aware of it, and then things around you that conflict with your own shit, you know, you know, obviously it's not something that's wrong out there, but it triggers us from the inside. And you know, as your awareness increases, you know, it gets uncomfortable. At least that's, you know.
You're right. And this is the, going back to my own experiences, this is where I talk about how things were like a switch, that in that regard. Where it wasn't a gradual self-awareness increase, it was a boom. It was a huge, and that's where we go back to the DNA activation. I need to also point out, when I was 11 years old, I came out of my family pool, and I was swimming, and I looked up, and above me was a giant UFO. And I got scared, and I went back under the water and held my breath for as long as I could. And then when I came back up, it was gone. And so I just kind of I remember getting out of the pool, getting my towel on, and just kind of like walking upstairs and laying down, because it's like, you know, what the hell just was that? And, you know, it was
kind of in shock, aren't you?
Yeah. Sure. And I didn't talk about it. And funny enough, as I started to go through this awakening, that started popping back into my head, and I would talk to Tom about it, and Tom would be like, you know, because he's been abducted, and he's been a lifelong abductee. Oh. So we think that that I had been picked or chosen for this role of conduit, and then they had, and this is also something that I had to agree to prior to incarnating. So I guess it would have been picked beforehand. I guess it was a choice that I had made, and that they were gonna, in my current incarnation, I was going to be given what was necessary. I could be a genetically manipulated human for all I know, based on everything that I've read, and this implanted with this necessary DNA that would trigger via a very specific binaural pattern, because that'll set the binaural audio will create that middle frequency from those two tones, and that could have, and since everything, even including DNA, begins its life as a quantum wave, those will resonate at certain frequencies.
Right.
And I had said one of the most amazing, eye-opening things throughout this experience was the 311 music, and I wrote about that in my article. The band 311. How could they possibly know what I'm going through, and then produce an album in 2014 that is parallel to my awakening? And I've listened to these tracks. I've turned them up and listened. In some of them, in the background, there's binaural audio going on, and there's a whoa, 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 and on these albums. Oh. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't, ego way, in an ego kind of way, I could be like, oh, I'm the only one, but that's not, practical. There was obviously a group of us that were, 311 is a band that I loved growing up, from their, one of their, they've been around since the 80s, but I got into them in the 90s. And I believe that it's all interconnected, and that, this was a big trigger moment that had to go down because after I went through what I went through, and even they talk about it in songs, and that things are going to go into a state of just eruption there, and that I had learned that there's, in regards to this global awakening, there's going to be pushback, because the negative forces, they want to keep the gig they got, so the world suddenly, after we went through what we went through, started to get very chaotic. And now look at it, now things are just absolutely batshit crazy, and honestly, they're pushing this well, I can't say it on that changes DNA, and they're looking for certain people with a certain DNA to shut down these conduits. And that's why one of the reasons it's become so fanatically aggressive. You have to understand that negative forces are going to be working through people here, and they're going to be, and some of these people aren't even people. They're, as David Icke has pointed out many times, especially these people in positions of power, are not human, and they're not people like, who. I'm trying to
sure, gotcha.
Dodge the
right. Okay, well, could it be kind of like the King Herod story, where he goes out, trying to knock all the firstborns or whoever's to
potentially,
in order that basically nix whatever's going to happen, because he had the idea that a new king, or whatever, but that wasn't so spiritually oriented, but whatever. Anyways, kind of like that.
Yeah, very similar to
out that. And just going to do like a shotgun blast, hoping that they snag the certain ones.
Because if negative forces are going to maintain some level of control of this planet and keep the vibratory states low using all the various techniques, fearing that their biggest problem are going to be positive forces incarnates who have been activated and are now serving a role that elevates the frequency of the planet. Well, that's going to be, and like Tom says, he calls it air support. We have air support. That's why my prayers, when I say for a prayer, I get it answered.
Right.
Because of serving this specific role here. So I'm being protected while, against all of this. Like, my entire life right now has been reorganized in a way that I don't touch any of these mandates at all. They do not interfere with my life at all.
Right. I'm
in a place where, just like in Florida, where it is aggressively fought against. So, in my life also so I financially, in all sorts of ways, to keep me out of the mess.
Right.
So, and of course, like I said, and when you have a sufficient level of awareness, there's nothing that negative forces could do to you. They cannot violate your free will. You have to agree to these things. And when you're aware and you know what's happening and you know what they're trying to do, then they can't touch you. Right. They can't, per the rules of engagement. They just can't. So
Right. And where I live, it's similar. I have, I work from home and there's no mandates where I live.
Right. So all of us who, and you as well, and that's, you say right now, you're even, with regards to your association with me, you're starting to see a lot of synchronicity in your life. Things are, and now are based on our conversations just now. So, all of us are going through, this is the one thing that it was really hammered into me, because when I came out the barn door with this, I'm like, I'm going to awaken the world, and everybody's like, this dude's crazy,
Right.
So everybody is going through it at their own pace. And that, when I first started, one of the things that was really another supernatural experience my wife and I had, I wanted to write an article about this the other day, and I completely forgot. We had turtles showing up in and I kid you not, where I was living at the time, there was a lake, but it was blocks away. Turtles, rows of turtles would be walking to my house, and they would camp out in our front yard. One was in our garage, and I have no idea how it got in our garage. And of course, I'm being bombarded with turtles, and I look it up. What is this meaning of the turtle? The term meaning spiritually. What is it? Right. And that's go at your own pace. So that was a very distinct. And we'd go on walks, and we'd see more turtles walking the path towards our house. It was one of those amazing. The one in the garage was really amazing, and because my garage had been closed, there's no way I don't know, I have no idea how it came in, and I couldn't leave because it got caught underneath one of my wheels, and the car wouldn't move. And I was like, what the heck's going on? And I look under there, and there's a turtle, and I'm like, all right. So I grab him and I put him outside, and with a bowl of water, went inside and got some. I used to have turtles when I was a kid, and I knew they like to eat like lettuce, and stuff. Right. So I went and I got some, and I made a little food for him, and we went on our way, and we came back, and he was no trace of him anywhere. No, and so, and then of course, then they started, and I even have some pictures of them on my yard. I won't spend all the time. If I find it right now, I could, because I started when all this stuff was happening. I just started to photograph things. The one thing we didn't think to photograph, which I really wish we would have, was the Eye of Ra. Why we were just in such a state of shock that we didn't think to take out our phones and take a picture of it. And that was one of my big regrets, because that was remarkable, because the symbol was represented by clouds, just as it's drawn, with the lines underneath the eye and the curves and everything. I didn't at the time realize that's not a very positive symbol. When I researched a little bit more of it, I eventually found out that that's kind of like negative forces say, okay, you're awakening, we got our eye on you. Or as Tom will frequently say to me, because I'll be I'll do something, and then next thing I know, I'm bombarded with 666s, psychic attacks, this and that. And he's like, well, if you're pissing in their cornflakes, the Eye of Sauron starts looking at you. Right. And that's what it is, because it's only there. The thing about the negative forces is they are only as powerful as we make them. If we're living in fear of them, but then they have all power over us. If we're not, then you find out they're kind of powerless, and they're dependent on manipulating you in an unaware state. Now, I've learned so much of how to combat these psychic attacks that they really don't have any. I'll recognize when it's happening, and I'll be able to put an end to it. So it's, especially even if I missed, like the other day I had one where I got the synchronicities in reverse. Here's one. Let's see if you can see the green screen kind of making, you can see, look, you can see the turtle. Oh,
yes, the turtle. Yes, I see it.
The green screen is kind of taking away the grass, the chroma key. But that was one of them that was just sitting in our front yard.
Oh, yes, it's I agree. Listening to messages, because life, I guess that's how it communicates to us, is largely through metaphor, I guess. Mm-hmm. And
metaphors,
like that, I mentioned to you that glove that I had lost, and I wanted that glove because it's one of my favorite work gloves. It's insulated, it's comfortable, and surprisingly, it's hard to find the right glove sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so I apparently had dropped it between here and down the road somewhere. And I looked for it, couldn't find it. And finally I gave up. And about 3 days later, and I was looking for it during the day, when it's light out. 3 days later, I had gone down for something. I forget what, and it was dark. I had the little flashlight. I was put my wife's Jeep in the shop. And I was walking back up the road with this little teeny flashlight, and I'm just shining it on the ground so I make sure I don't stumble or whatever. And there I see something, and I don't even know what I was looking at, but I'm prompted to lean over and pick it up.
Yeah.
I don't even, right now I'm kind of, not even really. And I lean it over, pick it up, and it's my glove.
Mm-hmm.
I find it in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
with a little flashlight. When during the day, in the bright sunlight of the day, I can't find it. And so, I'm getting the idea, maybe the message is like, well, something you want will happen, but it'll happen when it's supposed to happen, not when you decide it should happen or when it makes sense to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I caught it,
Yeah, it's remarkable. And, one of the things I've also learned is we do all have what I call guides and helpers. And Monroe had written about this and talked about this, and you hear about this in other, other circles. And the thing is, they're very passive. They're a passive bunch. I've noticed the positive forces are passive. They're and this includes your higher self. Your higher self has your best interest in mind. They will never mess with your free will. They will never. In my case, it got overt because I was crashing and burning when I had agreed to serve as a conduit, and I'm over here self-destructing, taking Adderall. So it was almost like, that's one of the reasons that video you sent me, that 9-minute video, talks about literally my experiences here. Where it talks about some of us are going to get so lost. Tom had said sounded like a case that I was like, I really got lost in the matrix. He said. Right. And that video talks about the same thing. So it started bringing me to tears when I was listening to that, because that video explains everything, including information that Tom had sent me, because he had sent
maybe you should toss that video in the show notes, maybe.
Yeah, I will. I'll put a link to that. And yeah, because that was it really. And one of the things was, as I was tearing up over it, I was like, these are, this isn't just some sort of a sappy thing. These are actually real tears of something that, this is an intimate story to me. I've been through hell, and I had to come out the other end, and to know that there's actually been a purpose and a reason, and after everything I've gone through and discovered, and to see it reinforced by these videos, and to it brings a level of comfort. My life, like you had asked if it's chaotic or anything. Like I said, it's very synchronistic. It's very and it's very balanced. I live a very, very balanced life, except my biggest problem right now is that I enjoy drinking wine when I cook. And sometimes I, refill my glass more than 2 times.
Yeah, sure.
And my limit is basically 3 glasses, as it usually is 3 beers. But I want to keep it back down to 2 glasses and sip a little bit slower and respect that, because I have a tendency, with the Adderall, to get a little locked into these behavioral patterns.
Right.
2 glasses of wine isn't like a big deal, but there are repercussions. Wine and any type of alcohol will open you up to negative forces if you consume too much. So I'm always, in my mind, I'm always aware of this. And one of the reasons is because if I that night, if something is showing up in my field of probabilities that says I'm going to drink a little bit too much, and this is the truth, 100%. Rochelle sees it. The numbers 3, 2, 1, that sequence will be everywhere. There will be cars all around me on their license plates that say 3, 2, 1. Numbers, phone numbers. I'll see stickers. I'll pass by it on a sign, and I'll talk to Rochelle about it, and she sees it, and you look it up, and 3, 2, 1 means you are doing something that is not in your best interest, is what I had researched it through. And I see this all the time, and so it guides me to make sure, like, I'll think about that bombardment. I'll look at the clock. It'll be 3:21. I'll look at, and it won't only, in their kitchen, especially, there's like 5 clocks, and they'll all be blaring, and I'll just have this intuition to, what time it is? What time is it? Like, randomly, I'll get this intuition to just check my phone, and I'll check it, and it'll be 3, 2, 1. I'll be like, I'll just kind of roll my eyes a little bit. Not roll my eyes, but I'm just kind of like, I'm
gonna have to be more open to that. I think I don't think I look for that, so
Well, I did the thing that I wasn't ever looking for it. I was like, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to drink. I'm going to cook. I'm going to be merry, and I'm like, and then suddenly, in relation to the amount of alcohol I'm consuming, I'm seeing the number 321, and I get bombarded with it. I had gotten in the beginning bombarded with it to such a degree that I had no choice but to see, okay, I know they talked to me using number sequences, so I need to, and I'm kind of looking at it like, yeah,
I don't want
to. Sometimes I joke with Rochelle when it's like 3:20. I say, okay, I'm putting my phone down. I'm not gonna look at it for a minute, but the sign will still get to me some way or another. So and that with that in my mind, especially in my subconscious mind, I don't, I do my best to not. I mean, occasionally I have fun. We have some really good family friends who they have a family of four. They have 4 kids. So that's some good friends of ours that live in our neighborhood that have 4 kids, and they, he's my friend. Randall and I did a video. Steve has got a huge beard, and he has a huge wine case. I mean, we were just joking the other day. We were like, this is what parenthood does to you. This is your only escape. I mean, we were just kind of joking. This is like the tonic for parents. And I only have 2 kids, but and they're with 4 kids, I could imagine that. So we all get together, we drink. Sometimes we drink a little bit too much. I've had situations where I drank too much and I did get nailed by an archon or a demon, and I got what was called marked one time, which scared the living daylights out of me, because when I was in a semi-lucid state, this voice kept telling me I'm marked, and then I had this visual of this demonic tattoo burning into my skin all on my back and shoulders and arms of this color that I can't even describe. The color was so out beyond what we see and I'm in a half dream state, and then this voice is going, you've been marked. And then when I woke up out of that, oh my God, everything seemed gray and I did not feel like myself. And that went on for like a week until finally I was like, your guides and helpers, and they won't help until you ask for it. You have to give them permission to help you. You can't just, you can't just expect that they're going to watch and go, okay, we need to, they watch and then they observe some way or another. And then, if you're in a state and you need help, and finally after about a week, I was said, please, I need help. Something's not right with me. This whole, because I didn't want it to be real, but it was real. And
when you ask, do you ask out loud verbally?
I do out loud. I do in my mind. I do. Because I know they could, I know they know what's going on in your thoughts too.
Okay.
So they, and so they, and I just say straight up to like to pray to my guides and helpers. I need some help. I need some assistance. I'm giving you permission to please clear my electromagnetic field from any type of attachments or any type of, entities. Could you help with marking? Not more than 10 seconds after I made that request for help with regards to this marking, a vision popped in my head of the tattoo burning off of my skin. And then I started to feel normal again. So it was some entity had taken advantage of my having drank too much, which opens you up like Swiss cheese, I say, and had somehow made an attachment or put an implantation into my electromagnetic field, did something to me. And then, tried to scare me on it with the visual and the, and whispering is the way that my mind had perceived it. But
I don't know if this is your experience. My experience, it feels like if I get in a really, maybe you don't have arguments with your wife because you're, maybe, I don't know, but if I get into a real intense argument with my wife, that lasts a while, where, I'll sometimes feel very drained afterwards, and I feel at that point sometimes that I could be experiencing some negative attacks or negative energies or something, because I'm in a weakened state, not because of alcohol, but because of that, just how an argument, it'll take you out. It's not, you mentioned that your first wife, you had a lot of arguing.
Oh God. It was like, do you remember that movie War of the Roses?
Yeah.
It was like that. I mean, we were out to get each other. It was really bad. We used to have all these designer vases, and man, those would go airborne. Oh yeah. It was, it was bad. It was really brutal.
So you understand. So is that make sense then?
Yeah, totally. Because, all right, it's, electromagnetic entrainment. If they sniff blood, they're going to go for it. If you will get into a confrontation that's going to lower your frequency and your vibration, they're going to be able to entrain on that lower vibrational state. And once they get in the door, then they're going to manipulate you. They're going to siphon off energy from you, from your electromagnetic field. That emotional energy that you generate goes into your, they call it your aura, but it's your, that's the New Age terminology, is your aura, but it's your electromagnetic field. And these emotions leak out into that. I mean, everything is energy at the end of the day. Everything is energy and vibration, and you leak out, and that's what they siphon from you. And so you will literally feel drained. And the thing about Rochelle and I, we don't argue. We might have a disagreement, but we also, one of the things we know from all of our experiences is if we're going down that path, then we know what's going to happen. If like when, and we know to stop, and we know to center ourselves. And once we ruin their game, they take off. They focus on probabilities. They're after you for your energy, the negative forces. They're not going to waste time if they're not going to get any energy from you, because they just like your car, it's like, you're not going to drive by. You're going to, if you have gas, you need gas they need energy to take your energy. So they're not going to waste their energy when they'll never get anything from you. Not at all.
Poor investment.
Yeah, exactly. So I was going somewhere with my gas analogy, but this is, you get what I mean. So the thing is, then that's what they have a way of, your future exists as a series of probabilities. If those probabilities are in their favor, and like I said, if they sniff blood, they're going to go for you. They're going to go. They're not going to pass an opportunity. They're going to go, and they're going to try to take you down. And but if you are wisen up to that, you stop the argument, you try to recenter yourself, bring you back up into a positive frequency, and those probabilities fall out of favor for them, they're done. They're gone. Boom. They're going to waste their time, and you'll feel light. And that we experience this very frequently, because as a conduit, they always look to see whenever I'm gonna, if I'm trending in that direction, they come like crazy.
Right. And because you're
serving a role here that they are not happy about. They do. And so I'm on their radar. Tom is on their radar. Anytime Tom and I talk, we'll get left ear ringing, which is that's considered, they call it, tinnitus here, but in spiritual circles, left ear ringing is a negative sign that you need something is on the prowl. And right ear ringing will typically mean a positive sign. He'll get it at the same time I'll get it, and we'll start seeing, because we compare notes, and we talk to each other frequently. So it kind of
forces you to be vigilant then.
Yeah, that's what I mean. My days are not chaotic, because I structure them to maintain my positive perception, and my days are very beautiful from morning until night, except for the rare occurrence and they'll try to get me through my daughter, they'll try to get me through other people, but I just stay calm, I stay positive, and I look at everything in a positive way. I don't engage into negative stuff. Like if she's really picking a battle with me, my daughter, I will just, I don't come down. I just stay calm, because I know what's happening. And so, yeah, I mean, my days are very, I begin my morning with affirmations, and then I dedicate my thought streams to my higher self, and I will only entertain the thoughts and actions that my higher self wants from me. And these are things I state explicitly when I wake up. So I delegate the authority to my higher self, who I know has my best interest. And then I will say a prayer, for my friends and my family, to be protected against any because stuff will happen to other people they try to work through other people to get to you. So I usually try to build a bubble of protection with visualizations and this and that. And I say things, and I'm that's why a lot of people say I'm just like the happiest dude they've ever met, because I just, and it like I said, it takes work, and it took a lot of conditioning, and I'm serious about it, because if I didn't, my life would be hell on earth, literally, from my service here, as I'm serving these positive forces. So, which, to some people is still the stuff of fantasy. I mean, but I know it's real, and that's the thing. So I know that, people like you understand, and our viewers understand, And people, and then the new, not that I've ever said anything bad about New Agers, they're on the right path. It's just, I think the New Age movement has been hijacked and twisted a lot.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, and what it's all about is just explaining these, my, and I've been interviewed over my modes of operation, I call it, the way that I am from a day-to-day basis. Which one of them was just deleted off YouTube not too long ago. Really awesome New World Order resistance group who I just love, and they did an interview with me on my just like on the spiritual nature and the spiritual side of things, and I was telling them what I do and how I maintain. And I mean, it's stuff that they had said back, they want their viewers to know this stuff so that it helps them in their day-to-day life, even if you aren't a spiritual person or you don't believe in it. That it's very practical perception management.
Certainly.
Yeah, it's very practical. I mean, the person that's in charge of your perception is you, no one else. It's just you.
Yeah.
The world could be burning down and it's up to you how you view it. You could be like, all right, well, yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
Or you could be like,
Since you have, kind of established that focus, that direction, of the positive and higher vibrational energies and that sort of thing, higher frequencies, since you've established that, and obviously it's probably built over time more, better. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed anything in the world around you as far as feedback on that? Is the world getting better?
Well, that's why right now we're suffering through their pushback, because they're not just going to let this roll out without a fight. What I mean by that is the global awakening that, people like David Icke have been talking about for 30 years.
Yes.
They're not going to go down without a fight. So that's what's happening right now. And then and before things get better, as they always say, they're probably going to get worse. And it's up to us in this, people like me, people like you in this realm to maintain our personal frequencies, because especially like with my regards, my personal frequency is very important to the ability to transfer and anchor positive frequencies through me as a conduit. So I have to maintain, and I do everything in my power to do that, because I know that there's a benefit to what's going on here. So and if I even just, it needs all of us, the positive forces, and I know there's a non-human intelligence that's guiding this whole global awakening. And it's like a job, literally, what I do. It's a job for me to maintain. I do it because I like it. So it's like the greatest job ever. But it's that level of discipline. Like there's an expectation for me, and I have to, I have to maintain I have to fulfill those expectations. And one of the things about this place, though, just like that video was describing, it's more like a sine wave. You go through these periods of pure awareness, bliss and thing, and then the matrix slams you back down, and negative forces try, so it's but you're always, that's what they mean by the positive forces are there to, if you start dipping, they're there to kind of help you back up and stuff like that. But I've been, for the most part, I've been really good with my regiment that was born of research and experience and affirmations. I can't express this enough. When you are affirming something, that you're making that affirmation, it's like a contract with yourself. And if you can say all these words, but without belief being behind it, you're not going to go anywhere. But if you believe and you say these affirmations, I mean, it becomes it just as real as you are. The affirmations that I say with regards to my higher self, and I only want only entertain the thoughts and actions that my higher self wants for me, and that's kind of like a contract, and you know what I mean. And and I believe in it because and so it becomes my reality. I don't get affected by little things, but like I said, it took a lot of work and conditioning, but anybody can do it. Anybody that is just a regular everyday person, you could hate your boss and tremendously and get so irritated every time your boss might come to talk to you. But if you begin to say affirmations to yourself, I love my boss, at first you're going to be like, But if you say, I love my boss, I respect my boss, I appreciate my boss, if you keep doing that every day, you'll start to feel different every time your boss comes around. And then to a point to where you're going to be happy when you see them, because you're affirming these things. You're changing your patterns. You're changing your mental, you're putting belief into something. So you're you're taking control, and you're turning it into from a negative into a positive direction. And we're able to do that. And like I said, but that takes work and repetition. So, and that, like, one of the reasons I wrote all those affirmations all over with a Sharpie, think of the symbolism of writing something with a Sharpie on a mirror. A lot of people would not think about that because they wouldn't want to ruin their mirror. But to me, this affirmation was way more important than the mirror. I wrote it on windows. I wrote affirmations all over my windows, and the affirmations were more important to me than the windows. So I had invested a lot of energy into the power of those affirmations, and which gave them even more, sway. And it works.
Well, because a lot of people, probably watching this and stuff, obviously watch David Icke, and watch, a lot of other related videos, probably a lot of other platforms as well, where they can get into discussing things that are maybe more directly affecting, us life and, in our society right now. But, but at the same time, they're fascinated by all this stuff, what's going on here, and the negative energies, and what's the global awakening and all this other stuff. But I think what a lot of people, they perhaps, and I'm speaking perhaps some from my own experience, we dilute our energies, or we dissipate our energies in those directions, maybe, instead of using more of our energy towards some of, like what you're describing, positive affirmations, doing the steps right now in our own lives to generate more positive energy and more balance and that sort of thing, and I think that there's times when I've been out of balance on that, where I'm spending all my time and energy reading about what's the latest thing going on with the archons, or whatever, that's the topic, instead of turning around and maybe spending some time meditating, or more time perhaps, taking a look inside and see what's going on with me, and why I'm having difficulty here or there in life, and what are my obstacles, and how should I get over them, and what kind of affirmations should I develop to best take the next step where I need to go,
The one of the biggest misconceptions that I have learned is that a lot of belief that in order for you to be spiritual or in touch with positive energies, that you need to do things like yoga or sit on top of a mountain and meditate. And I've come to find out that that's simply not true. It's those are crutches to help with people getting into the mindset, but ultimately you will have total control over your inner world and able to put yourself into these meditative states, or they could already be there and you're just unaware of them, to be more receptive of a meditative state. Because basically it's just a brainwave frequency. I mean, not basically, but ultimately meditation puts you in a certain brainwave frequency where you're more susceptible to certain impressions and this and that, and it opens you up into into a different realm of energies. But you can do that sitting at your desk, just relaxing, closing you can do that while reading a book. You don't have to sit like one of the great yogis, is that what they call them, yogis, like a pretzel. I mean, there is some purpose behind this. This is connecting of a circuit because you're building a loop here, right? So there are some purposes behind these settings, but they are ultimately, it's spirit before mind and mind before matter. So there, it's you can do the same thing. So this is the expression of all your energies. Me moving my arms or doing this is an expression of a certain intent. If you have that intent within, and you're, you know what I mean? You don't have to necessarily act out these things. They're used as a way to get you into that mental state. But you can become so good and proficient at different states of awareness that you're able to just go through it. And a lot of people just do it instinctively without even being aware that they're able to do it. So these things are all accessible to us, all of it. And it's our belief in it. You, like, if you were like me before my awakening and made fun of it, well, you're never gonna achieve, you've closed the door on yourself, essentially. You don't take it seriously, right? So you'll never be able to, if you're, like how I used to be, I sort of would make fun of like New Agers and stuff like that. So of course that door slams shut. I'm never going to experience those things because I'm making a mockery of it, which is that, and that mockery is negative energy with negative intent. And so that will never, but if you are open and receptive and lending some of your belief, because ultimately it is all belief systems that manifest that's what manifestation is the your deep-seated subconscious beliefs becoming your reality. So if you change those, you bring all this stuff into your experience, good or bad.
Yeah.
You know, for the most part, you want to change it to be all of the positive stuff that you could get into your life.
Right.
Negativity is so uncomfortable to me physically because of the way I've conditioned myself that it makes me I'll get tremors if there's a lot of negative stuff going on around me, or negative thought. My body, especially in my rib cage area, would start to tremor. So that's one of the reasons why some stuff is just terrible, too hard for me to see. Some of the stuff that people do to each other and some of the videos they post, I know I can't watch videos that are horrible. And like what they run in the news, I can't watch TV. TV's too hard for me.
I agree.
I even just like my parents still watch a lot of movies, Hollywood movies, and I can't sit there for more than 5 seconds without starting to feel sick to my stomach because there's just nothing but negativity oozing out of these. There's like all these dark and demented imagery. They're being manipulated by the refresh rate of the TV. They're being manipulated on a subconscious level by being put into a trance and then bombarded with these negative energies and these negative emotions, negative thoughts, negative storylines. Everybody's depressed. Everybody's sad. Everybody's cheating on each other. And this is what they call entertainment. That's how upside down and inverted this place is.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because last night my wife and I, we watched a movie. It's called Just Go With It. I don't know if you've heard of it, with Jennifer Aniston and I think Adam Sandler. And and I was thinking about it during watching it. It had some funny moments, some things, it's just kind of a silly romantic comedy. But they were cheating, lying, all this other
negative stuff, horrible stuff.
And it made me really feel uncomfortable. And I remember a couple of times thinking to myself, well, why am I watching this?
Mm-hmm.
And why would I do that to myself? What would be the point? Because I got time and I want to just spend it doing that. So she had to get up early to go to work, so she wanted to get ready and to go to bed and stuff, so before the movie was over. So when she left, I thought, I don't want to watch this. Click.
That's true. I mean,
yeah,
we have the only thing that we watch, my daughter watches, she watches these YouTube gamers. I watch a guy named Adam the Woo. I don't know if I think I might have brought him up in our last time we were talking. Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
He's actually, he and my son share a birthday. They were both born on August 10th, and he's got like 500,000 followers, but he likes to read his comments and he'll reply to my comments every once in a while. He's like a guy that like films himself like going on road trips, or he goes to the Disney theme parks a lot, or used to, and make videos about that, but he's changed. Just that's who I'll watch, because it's like, he never curses. He says words like heck it. He's I'll curse occasionally, but sure, some people can above and beyond. He's very family friendly. Always. So that I'll watch that. I'll watch. That's about it. I might, because like I've a lot of people, especially those in the MK Ultra crowd who have researched it, will talk a lot about the Disney Corporation. But I grew up going to Disneyland in California, and we would go multiple times a month. So it became very embedded in and I enjoyed it as a kid, and as an adult. One of my big things, I want to take my kids there. The company is quite, but and of course they're extremely capitalizing on the stuff that Walt Disney had built in his lifetime. A lot of people say what they will about Walt Disney. I've always had a more positive impression about him, but they weren't, back then when they built Disneyland, it was supposed to be just a fun place for families to go, where parents and adults could have fun together. You pay $1, you get a ticket book, with the E-ticket and the ABC and E. I think it was ABC.
I went as a kid. I loved it.
Yeah, and you leave back in the day, and it would open in 1955. People left with their wallets intact. Now it's unbelievable. It's like you have to pay $120 something per person to go in. You go in and buy a hamburger like Tomorrowland Terrace at Disneyland. It's like $20 for a hamburger. It's like really? And this is the modern day company, and I understand. I get it when it comes to capitalism and this and that, and these they're going to charge so much as people are willing to pay, and people go to, so it's, it's their choice. But I just the company now is basically all about social engineering, especially in terms of their content and their movies and their videos, and it's not, and I've always considered Hollywood has never been. I mean, look at the word Hollywood. The holly tree is where the witch would make her, from the wood of the holly tree, a witch would make her magic wand with which she would be used to cast a spell on people.
Yeah.
So Hollywood, the word itself means casting a spell, and that's what they do. They manipulate, and that's what all these movies are. They're not entertainment. They're social engineering masquerading as entertainment. So, and it's all negative for a reason, because it's all about, like, archons need to maintain you in a lower vibrational state. So everything in our reality is negative.
Yeah.
So it's, and like I said, I turned off, and that's one of the places I still, like, I do want to go take my daughter to Disneyland. So that's this is a long story short here. That's another thing I watch on YouTube. I went off a little bit on that one.
No, I think that was good information. I mean, the fact that, people have to be careful with
what you put in your mind.
Exactly. Put in your mind, or what you consider entertainment, like what I was discussing about last night. This is supposed to be entertainment. Am I really being entertained? Am I enjoying this? No, I'm not enjoying this.
Mm-hmm.
The term of entertainment is supposed to be you're having fun, or, right? Well, I'm not having fun watching this.
Right.
So, I guess you could say, well, aren't you curious where the story goes? Do they get back together? Do they get together? How do you? No,
it's all fake. It's all just
if I didn't ask that question, yes, I am curious.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked that question myself, and I'm like, well, somebody wrote this stupid story. It's not even real people. Why would I really care? It's a story. So what happens is kind of irrelevant. If it was a real life documentary, then okay, maybe.
I always take issues even with those. Let me tell you why. Because my parents were watching something on Princess Diana the other time, and it professes to show her in all these crazy. I was just watching it briefly because I was trying my hardest to make homemade peanut butter cookies, which failed miserably. I don't know why. I need to revisit that. But I was just catching what they were watching, and I was like, this is a lot of artistic liberty. They're professing to write a truth based on a true story. But was there anyone present through all these moments that they purport to talk about? Like, was there a camera and a recording on Diana when she was alone in her room? And if there wasn't, how can they claim to know what she was doing at that time, or what she was thinking, or what it just all becomes all phony, becomes all fake. She's not even alive to defend herself. So she was murdered by that family. So at least that's what I believe. Yeah, that was total. They even put the Illuminati symbol over the tunnel, the eternal torch, the eternal flame. They put it over the tunnel that she was killed in. Well, they put it in your face like that. They look at John F. Kennedy. They blew his brains open, and then they put the eternal flame there, and we think it's a symbol of John F. Kennedy's spirit's life. Or no, it's the Illuminati bragging that they assassinated him. Took him out. Central bankers and their power, structure. Anybody that's moving against the Federal Reserve, as they make an example of. Boom. In public.
Yeah. The history, the way they tell us is, obviously not right.
No, it's all deception. It's the perception deception, like David Icke says. That was that book.
Perception deception?
The Perception Deception from 2013.
Oh.
It's like a David Icke book. It's
right. Oh,
that thick.
Oh, you read it?
Oh yeah. I've religiously read his stuff, and I was hooked into it. Like, and like I said, I was led to his information. I wanted to find out everything about him and everything about this and everything about he went through. When I started to realize that his experiences parallel mine, I'm thinking, okay, am I supposed to write like these huge books? Am I going to be like the next David Icke? Okay. Yeah. Right. That didn't happen. And I'm like, okay, well.
Right. Oh.
But that's when I had discovered that I'm serving this role that is, it's different. I'm not up on a stage somewhere, but I'm serving as a conduit
Sure.
an important role. And the great thing is I get to talk about it and, talk about it with great people like you and open up people's eyes and, and set them on their own path. But,
well, and like you say with the turtle, it happens at its own pace, right?
Yeah. And that was the big thing.
Right.
We're already at an hour and a half. Should we rein ourselves in?
Yeah, I have work to do.
Do you? Oh, well, so what's coming up for us? We talked about this in the last show. On Thursday, we're going to do a new episode with Dylan Charles, and we're going to talk about his gig that he's taking on now, his new roles, and you being one of his students. Is that, if that's fair to say?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yep. And in fact, he's actually already had a definite impact on my life, just following some of his instruction and techniques and approaches. I was kind of, amazed.
Yeah, he's good. Dylan's good. Dylan's good. He had, I was his first client for his personal development stuff. And I'm, he had described me as being like this, just like trains of thought going in every direction.
Oh.
And he was trying to help me navigate, what I called, like, it's like, if you were to follow my train of thought, sometimes it's like trying to make sense of a rail switch yard where the tracks are going and every, and you could probably pick up on this sometimes when I talk and go off on a tangent and then I'm over here. So, he was, I've always known how I am, but he was able to really boom, 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 nail it down real fast. And
really,
which gave me, a lot of encouragement. I think he's going to be quite successful. He had been thinking about it, and guess who it was that had motivated him into that realm was actually Randall. We did a show with Dylan, and and Randall was like, you should, and Dylan was already thinking about it, and he's like, you should really take your engagement with your audience to the next level, personal development, those kinds of things. And I remember the moment, and Dylan was kind of like going, he's like, yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Randall. I think I'm going to do that. So that was a synchronistic time. So we'll have Dylan. Gareth is off celebrating his birthday right now. So
happy birthday.
And then when he gets back around and starts firing off some replies, I'll set up a time for him.
Right.
I got to get with Tom. I know Tom's scheduling. I know he gets tons of emails. So it usually takes him a couple days to reply, but I'd sent him that video link because he had sent me material that I read, which was so similar. And he had said this, I believe fully that this was us before we came here. And it was basically what that was talking about. We were going to forget almost the same. And so that's going to be a good show. And well, once again, Lynn, thank you so much for being my co-host. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff coming up. We'll always be doing our Sunday show, but when we get an interview and we have to schedule it like in the middle of the week, so there might be a little bit more episodes that come out, back to back, but that'll be okay. Yeah,
right.
Everybody gets their own time to wait and watch. And hopefully the mods out there, the moderators will be kind on us.
Oh, yes. I think we were, I think we behaved well.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't say anything. I was just,
I tried to read, because I know last video I splurted out a few things and I noticed it got chopped a little bit. So hopefully that met their requirements, and
I don't know. So, I didn't know. I didn't edit. I mean, I gave it over to Aaron to edit, and he just put the intro into the graphics and stuff like that. I know he didn't edit.
There's a couple parts where I chopped, where I definitely said,
"Oh, you purposefully kind of
said." I said something that wasn't good, acceptable, and it got chopped very briefly, but in a way that it made me say something differently than what I actually said.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Well,
so,
that works. And for some, check this out. For some miraculous, I think I texted you. I don't know how. Randall was one strike away from the channel being shut down. When I went and I posted our last video episode, his entire was wiped. And it went back to just him getting a warning over one video that he had made over I can't remember what it is. It was like the title was like you have to fight for your life for freedom or something like that. And they removed that video, get more. So they reset, they or he or somebody reset the channel to give us a good clean slate. So I don't have any way of explaining it. I know they were gunning for me, and I was afraid that if I showed my face, they were good because they deleted my last video before ours, the one that I'd done before, and that was the second strike, and we were up to our third strike. But now when I did ours, boom, it's all clear. So
right now
Randall wanted it.
We have a little breathing room, you're saying?
Yeah, we have breathing room. So we don't need to be too worried, but I want to keep Randall's channel on because he has a lot of very inspirational videos that help people that I haven't backed up, that I know people will be keen on saying. And that was his dying wish was for me to carry on. So, we have been given a clean slate, perhaps supernaturally. I mean, this is not outside the realm of my experiences. So the fact that it was just wiped back to, just being a warning, pretty remarkable. So we got some, so we will have some, we got some backing by our allies. So, all right. Well, everybody, thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next show.